Today on the show, we're talking so much about fintech, and now let's talk about Razorpay. Why are we going to talk about Razorpay? Because Razorpay is now powering merchants to accept UPI payments with credit cards. In fact, it's becoming the first fintech to be able to do that, and it's the first time it's going to be allowed to be done that outside of the Rupay credit cards. Joining me to talk more about this is the co-founder at Razorpay, Shashank. Shashank, it's always a pleasure talking to you. Thank you so much for giving us time today here on Startup Central. You explain to our viewers, first up, what is this new feature by Razorpay and why is it a game changer?
Hey, Nayantara, thanks for the invitation. Always a pleasure speaking to you. So this is a very new innovation, a very industry-first innovation that that Razorpay is bringing to the market, which is what we are enabling Rupay credit cards on UPI now, right? So customers can now, today when you make a payment via UPI, you select your bank account and then you make a payment and the money gets debited from your bank account. But there was no way of paying via UPI through a credit card. So today, what we have launched now is that when you are paying to a merchant, you can select your credit card on, let's say, the popular apps, Google Pay or Phone Pay. You can select your credit card and then you can make a payment through that, right? So this is something that is just getting launched. The initial few bank partners where for whose consumers this will work is HDFC Bank, Punjab National Bank, for example, and more banks are slowly coming on board. And the initial pilot that has been rolled out in partnership with NPCI, and Axis Bank. And we expect that, the Rupay credit cards customers of these banks can start utilizing to pay the merchants via Rupay credit card on the UPI apps that are out there.
So for everything, still a Rupay card is needed. I want to start from the basics.
A Rupay credit card is needed, and that also for some of the banks that are out there, right? So HDFC Bank, Punjab National Bank, Union Bank, and Indian Bank. These are the first banks that are rolling out this benefit to their consumers. And in due course of time, in next couple of months and 3 months down the course, I think all the banks will come on board the platform. So this won't work today for Visa or Mastercard. This will only work for Rupay credit card. And why this is important, is that it will allow credit to be delivered via the UPI payment rails. We have seen UPI payments growing month on month, year on year to a significant volume, right? Today, almost like 7 billion transactions happen through UPI payment rails, but all of them are simple debit transactions. None of them are credit transactions. And if you know, all of us aspire for a better lifestyle. Some of us want to pay for our education. Some of us want to get a new laptop. And sometimes it's easier to make these purchases on credit rather than through the cash that you hold, right? And with Rupay credit card coming on UPI, now banks have a very good instrument to give credit to their consumers through the UPI payment rails.
Shashank, can I ask you, that is the plan that when we talk about UPI and credit via credit cards, for which only Rupay is allowed at the moment, you would know this because you're the first one to come out with the product, which is being seen as a disruptor. Is it always going to be only for Rupay? You're saying it's not right now for Visa and Mastercard. Is the plan to extend it later on?
I think the plan right now is to see the response on this with the customers, with the merchants out there, right? And iron out all the issues and do a broader rollout. And then I think, a few months down the line, 3 months, 6 months down the line, I think, there'll be more consideration of whether, Visa and whether this should be extended to Visa or Mastercard as well.
Now, we often also talk about UPI becoming popular for the smaller token transactions, right? That is what has really helped in its penetration. When you put credit card into the mix, when you now start talking about B2Bs, merchants, will we start to see larger UPI transactions? I'm talking about the value of transactions.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I think one of the reasons credit cards are also very popular is because of the reward points you get, right? And because the way banks reward customers, for good credit behavior, right? And the ecosystem rewards people for good credit behavior. It's a very, spending on a credit card is also a very good way to start building your credit history, so that you can get larger loans down the road if you really need it at some point of time. So you're absolutely right. Credit card is very much used for larger ticket purchases, while UPI is much more popular on smaller ticket size. But with this change, it's very much possible that going forward, we'll also see UPI being used for larger ticket purchases, whether it's for education fees or for electronic devices, or for taking any vacation outside.
So Shashank, this information is of course out from NPCI. You guys had also shared this data point that India currently has what? More than 250 million users of UPI. Out of this 250 million Indians, 50 million have either one credit card or more. The question is, when we talk about this 50 million users, how many of them have a Rupay credit card?
I, I think that's a very good question. I would say the number would probably be in single digit millions, right? So that will still be a smaller percentage, but I think what we have to remember is that this is still a very large pilot, right? We are still trying to launch a very new thing in the ecosystem. If you remember, UPI was actually launched in 2016. It became popular over 2-3 years and really took off, right? So I think if you see the credit gap in the country, in India, we have always known that there's significant amount of credit gap. We need to bring more and more people under the credit umbrella, right? And help them upgrade their lifestyle, their aspirations. And credit is the best instrument to support many of these goals, right? With this, what I also anticipate is that it will help increase the issuance of Rupay credit cards to multiple customers, right? Because a lot of us are used to paying for various things via UPI, and we may not have access to credit. But with using your UPI transaction history, it's very easy for banks to start extending Rupay credit card to those customers, and they can just leverage the UPI apps that they're already familiar with to make these payments, right? So it might take few months or a year to really take off. But I think what the phase that we are in is, it's really the innovation phase and the early adoption phase, where Razorpay is working with the merchants and their customers to really iron out all the issues, and also demonstrate the benefits of this to the ecosystem, to the regulator, to the banks, and also encourage everyone to drive more credit adoption in the country.
So Shashank, you're saying it's an important pilot, it's an early stage. It's been about a week at least since you folks announced that this feature is going live, which has been made possible also because of Razorpay and Axis Bank. What's the initial response been like?
I think the response from merchants has been really good. They're very excited, because all of them believe in the power of credit, right? And historically we have seen, consumers with credit cards driving higher spends on businesses. Okay, so most of the businesses, really prefer distributing more credit to consumers because it increases their spending capacity, right? So the response from the merchant side has been very positive, and we are getting good adoption. I think on the consumer side, I think we are driving education programs. Okay, so we have seen few hundred transactions on this front, but this is still to really widely take off. So we are doing more of an education sessions with various consumers, sending out marketing messages and mailers, and helping educate them and understand right, what does this new thing is, what does this really mean. And same is going on with the banks as well. So I think as time goes on, as more and more awareness builds, as banks also encourage more and more customers to transact through credit card, I think we'll see exponential growth down the road, right? And I think the aim for next 1-2 months is to just really demonstrate all of this is working great, and then just push the pedal on on driving adoption to all the consumers of Rupay credit cards in the ecosystem.
So there's so many things that are happening together, and for our viewers, how should we see this? So you have UPI, which is penetration is still on. It's been a massive success. It's the envy of the world. Then you have now credit on UPI, and people are confused, how is this going to work? Do I need to carry my credit card? Do I not need to carry my credit card? Then you had the digital rupee as well. for which we may need another wallet. On top of all of this, now we're trying to talk about OSEN, building credit on top of UPI. What all is going on, and how does it all fit together?
I think one of the great things about India is the choices that we have available, right? Because having good number of choices ensures that everyone can figure out what is it that they really prefer to use and adopt those things, right? And the market decides what really wins in the end, rather than one entity or one company or just the government, right? So I think in that sense, what I would say is that having a choice is really good in this case, right? So there are consumers who are who already use credit card, are habituated with spending via credit card, and that's absolutely fine, right? And now we have a bunch of consumers in the country who have come up, especially become digital for the first time in last few years, and who are habituated to paying using UPI. They don't carry a card, right? They don't even have a credit card in a lot of cases, right? So UPI, I think, has been very broadly responsible for bringing financial inclusion and helping people understand digital transactions, right? So this, I think, is the next phase of evolution of UPI in terms of thinking, hey, how do we drive more credit penetration in the country and help the UPI rails deliver credit to multiple consumers, in the country, right? I don't think any consumer at this stage really need to worry about e-rupee or OCEN that is there. OCEN is not at all a consumer product, I would say, right? That's more built for businesses to figure out how to distribute credit in a better manner, right? So it's nothing to do, consumers don't really need to worry about it. Same on the e-rupee front that is there. E-rupee is not a payment rail. E-rupee is an alternate for cash. E-rupee is an alternate for a money that sits in your bank account, right? So it's a digital version of cash rather than anything else. And it's still at a nowhere close to the UPI scale, right? So the initial pilots that have been launched by RBI are more to do with B2B, wholesale transactions, wholesale settlements, and very few pilots that are happening on the e-retail front, right? So for now, I would say from a consumer perspective, all they need to think about is that, hey, you all of us already use UPI. We are very familiar with that. It's an extremely good payment instrument that is there. And now, if you have a Rupay credit card, you can, just like you used your bank account to make a payment on UPI, you can also start using your credit card to make a payment on UPI. And you don't need to carry your credit card around to make a payment via UPI. That's the beauty of it, right? Everything sits on your mobile, and that's it. You don't need to carry anything separate from it.
I have to ask this one question because, we're talking soon after there are a lot of headlines that have been grabbed, right? You had the AIMS hacking case. More is coming out of Jamtara as well as Jharkhand. How are you guys staying ahead of the curve? Because, so far, while we've been hearing about breaches, you've had to stay away and you've had to remain absolutely paranoid about this issue.
I think there are two types of cybersecurity issues. One is the systems getting breached, right? Where your card number gets stolen and your PIN might get stolen, right? I think what we have seen is in last 2-3 years that the cybersecurity incidences are are having lesser impact. I wouldn't say it's significantly come down maybe, right? But the regulatory changes that have happened with respect to card numbers not being allowed to be stored by any entity anymore, and UPI itself being a very secure payment instrument where you need to enter your PIN on every transaction. At least we are seeing lesser impact of cybersecurity incidences going forward. So I have more confidence that even if systems get breached, your payment data won't get stolen, and your payment, nobody can do a payment on your behalf. On the other hand, the second type of incidences that are very popular, and all of that has been demonstrated in Jamtara series are what we call the social hacking incidences, right? Where someone poses as a bank agent or something else and calls you and really gives you some offer which is too good to be true or too lucrative, and then convinces you to share your OTP or payment details so that they can defraud you, right? So this is a type of issue which is really something that we need to ensure being on top of, because as more and more consumers are getting familiar with digital transactions, this is the part where it's really still a problem, right? Like, and I think there are various ways that everyone is trying to tackle it, right? One is like with RBI, NPCI, all the networks, all the payment gateways, and all the banks that are there. We are driving multiple education sessions, multiple customer awareness campaigns to really help them understand that, hey, you don't need to share your OTP or your payment details with anyone else in the world for whatsoever might be the case, right? Nobody nobody in the world needs to ask for your OTP or your payment details to enter on a secondary page. Only you
No,
and you
but
need to deal with your own.
Shashank, it's not just OTPs anymore. It's not just OTPs anymore. I remember reading in the newspaper 2 days ago, a gentleman from Delhi losing almost a crore or short of a crore because there was no OTP sharing. But again, the gang is suspected to be from Jamtara. They just kept making numerous calls from unknown numbers. He was a victim of just answering his phone, not sharing any OTP.
Nayantara, I also read about that case, and I was also very curious. But I think that there's some mystery involved there, right? So while the news has come out, I'll wait for the investigation details to really understand like what happened there. But what I would reiterate is that I don't think anyone can defraud you if they don't have your OTP, if they don't have your payment details.
Fair point. So it's not always the case of what is being made out to be prima facie. Shashank, before I let you go, it's the year, we're coming towards the end of the year. Your gross transaction values had already topped $100 billion. You were last valued at $7.5 billion. We have seen a meltdown in the fintech world, around the world, and in India. Has that started to change? Today, for instance, we had Helios Capital on air saying they've added Paytm recently in their portfolio, even as Paytm is flirting with that, announcing that buyback of over 800 crores. The question I'm trying to get at is to you, did you face any markdowns? One. And second, IPO plans?
We haven't faced any markdowns, and frankly, I think our investors are very much on board with what all we are doing, and I think we still have significant investor interest as well, right? But at this point, we don't have any plans of fundraising, right? We are sitting tight. We are managing our cash position really well. We are very focused on driving our growth in a very sustainable manner, right? And for now, at least for next 2 years, there are no IPO plans and on the roadmap. Beyond that, then we'll think through and see what happens.
Always a pleasure talking to you. Thank you so much for joining us here today on Startup Central.
Thanks a lot, Nayantara.